Chapter 11. Stop! Her shrill scream didn't slow me down a bit. Somehow I managed to kick and struggle to my feet. I charged up the steep hill. My legs churned. I grabbed handfuls of grass to pull myself along. No way was I going to stop. No way was I going to let her get a hold of me. Help! The word stop made me run harder, but when the old witch screamed help, still clambering up the steep slope on all fours, I hesitated. I glanced back over my shoulder. She wasn't coming across the bridge. In fact, she'd moved away from the two wooden planks and was standing between the brush thicket and the water. Frowning, I turned around to look at her. Her wrinkled, craggy face seemed to soften. Help first, run later. Run away later. I straightened, tilting my head to the side. Her gnarled finger pointed at the brush. Squeaky getting water. Did get him. He be dead. You help chase back in house. This is a footnote here that the witch or the old woman speaks grammatically incorrect. Very much so. So listen to her dialect. I took a step toward the hill, then stopped. What? She pointed at the pile of driftwood where I'd landed only moments before. You jump up and down, yell, shout, throw wood at water and at other end of lime bushes. Cautiously, I took a step toward her. She nodded and pointed again at the driftwood. Throw! The old witch knelt down and looked into the thick green brush. I picked up a chunk of wood and tossed it. It went plop in the still Blackwater. She turned and shot an angry glance in my direction. Throw wood and yell! I shrugged. Then I started throwing one chunk of wood after another. I waved my arms and jumped up and down and yelled and shouted. Again I threw more driftwood. The old witch kept crawling around at the edge of the thicket. She peeked under the low-hanging branches. Once in a while she reached out and shook one of the shrubs. After a minute or two, I saw something at the side of the brush. It looked like a half-grown opossum. There was white gauze wrapped around his back legs, and he dragged himself from the thicket with his front paws. There, I pointed. Quickly, the old woman scrambled to her feet. She wasn't very fast, so it took her a few tries, but she finally caught the opossum before he could slip back into the thick brush. She picked him up tenderly in her wrinkled hands. The little opossum made a squeaking sound and snapped at her. She kind of cradled him against her like I'd seen Mama do with Christine when she fell down and got hurt or something. The opossum bit at her again. She just held him in her arms and smiled. After a moment, he quit biting and wrapped his ratty tail around her wrist. Opossum's slow, squeaky, she told him. Her voice was soft and gentle. "Da opossum with two broke legs can be real slow. How you run so fast?" I could tell by the way she acted that she wasn't trying to hurt the little animal. She cared for it. I felt kind of proud of myself for helping. When she turned toward me, a big smile stretched across my cheeks. When she said thank you, I was going to nod and tell her, "You're welcome." Her dark eyes studied me a moment. "Run away now." My smile drooped to a frown. "Huh? You friend run away when you fall down the hill. You run away now too." "But," I stammered, "aren't you even going to say—" "Go home," she snapped, cutting me off. Then she turned and started for her shack. I put my hands on my hips, glaring after her. As she walked away, my eyes fell on another cage near her. A little squirrel was sitting in it, munching on something. "Hey," I called. "What other animals you got? You a vet or something?" She spun around, her dark eyes cut into me. "Animals no like people. I no like 'em neither. You go home." Her tone was dark and stern. I took a step backward. Her dark eyes didn't leave me. She shooed me with her free hand. You go home. Get away from this place. I get you if you don't. She wheeled and marched off to her cabin. I stood on the bank, pouting, glaring at the back of her white, wispy hair until she disappeared around the corner. When I heard a door slam, I turned and stomped up the hill. That's all the thanks I get? I muttered as I marched up the slope. Try to help somebody. I expected to find Jimmy hiding in the tall grass when I topped the ridge, but he was no place in sight. When I called out his name, he didn't answer. I headed down the path for home. Some friend he is, I mumbled to the crows that called from the forest as I passed. Almost fell into Blackwater swamp. Almost get caught by the old witch. He doesn't even stick around to see if I'm still alive or not. Some friend. He's probably hiding under my bed at home. Jimmy hadn't run home. He wasn't hiding under my bed either. He was standing beside the big cypress tree where the trail came from the hill and followed the riverbank. He smiled and waved when I rounded the bend. Thanks a lot, I growled. Some friend to run out on me like that. He stammered. I thought you was hurt. I didn't run out on you. I was going for help. Yeah, right, I snorted. He smiled again and gave a big shrug. Really, Ted, he lied. I was gonna go get your dad. I was almost to your house. Then, well, I didn't want to scare your folks if you was all right. So I come back to check. I just got here and listening to his lame excuses, I couldn't keep my teeth from making a crunching sound as they ground together. I shook my head. Come on, Jimmy, let's go home. Chapter 12. We'd been gone a long time. Jimmy's mother, Barbara, picked him up about 15 minutes after we got home to the house. I was glad he was gone. I was even happier that his idiot cousin, Bubba, didn't come after him. I just knew if that jerk had roared into our driveway in his black Chevy, Daddy would have gone out and beat the tar out of him. As soon as Jimmy left, I went to tell Mama and Daddy about what happened to Christine last night. I had to. And as soon as I told them what I had to, I wanted to tell them about the witch of Blackwater Swamp. Daddy already knew the guy's name was Bubba Larkin, although he didn't know he was any kin to Jimmy. He knew because last week he'd gone to town and talked to Sheriff Thebeau. The sheriff told him the reason the patrolman hadn't caught Bubba for speeding or reckless driving was probably because the patrolman who worked our area was Bubba's cousin. He said now that he knew who we were talking about, he'd assign another patrolman to our neighborhood and see if that person couldn't get the situation under control. Mama and Daddy weren't too happy about Christine. They didn't get on me much for not watching her like I was supposed to. Mama did say that she thought I was responsible enough to look in on her more often, or at least to make sure the front screen was latched. Then she added, maybe you're not as grown up as I'd hoped. Like I said, they didn't chew on me much. After the little lecture was over, I started telling about the old witch and the cat cages and animals. I loved animals. Mama didn't listen for long because Christine woke up from her nap and started whimpering. Daddy listened up until I got to the part where she caught the opossum and told me to go home instead of thanking me. I want to sneak back out and see what other kind of animals she's got in those cages. You think Daddy got up from the table. I got to get that darn lawn mowed before it gets dark, he announced. Then over his shoulder he added, can't believe the grass starts growing so early in these parts. And you quit messing around out in that swamp. The old woman doesn't want people around her place. You do like she says. When Mama came back, I wanted to tell her about the part of the story she'd missed. I wanted to ask her if she really thought the old woman was a witch, and if she thought it was okay for me to sneak back out there and see what was up. I never got the chance. Mama shoved Christine at me and went to the refrigerator. You can tell me your story later, dear. I need to get supper started. Watch, Christine. Watch Christine. That was the story of my life. Don called Sunday after church. He told me that his dad got him a new bicycle. We met at Parsons' grocery and rode to the park. Don bought a loaf of bread to feed the ducks. We didn't chase them. Well, not much. At least we didn't try to run over them on our bikes. We rode after them just a little, then parked our bicycles and tossed pieces of bread to them. When we emptied the bread sack that Don brought, we rode down the back of the dam and climbed over the fence. We had a lot of fun exploring the little creek. Don found a wide, shady place in the stream that he figured would be a great spot to go fishing. He told me that the next time we came, he'd bring his fishing rod and an extra one for me. When we left, he asked if I would loan him my autographed copy of Scared Stiff for his next book report. I promised I'd bring it Monday morning. My copy of Scared Stiff wasn't on my dresser. It had vanished, and I couldn't find it anyplace. I remembered Don looking at the book when he came over to spend the night. I remembered picking it up and thinking about reading it for my next book report, then putting it down and finding Weasel. It wasn't as long, but I figured I could get through it more quickly. But for the life of me, I couldn't remember where I'd left that autographed book. I could have sworn it was on my dresser, but first thing Monday morning, I was going to find Don and tell him he'd have to get another book, at least until I figured out what I'd done with the one he wanted. I never got around to telling him, not until we were in the lunchroom on Monday. The reason neither one of us even thought about it until then was because of all the excitement. When I got off the bus, I noticed 2 police cars and a sheriff's car parked in front of the school. Seeing a cop car at school wasn't all that unusual. Policemen sometimes came and talked to us about safety or drugs. Seeing 3 police cars was unusual, though. The kids waiting outside for the bell to ring didn't seem to have any idea what was going on. Coach Reicher was usually outside with us. He yelled at people if they got to running too much or scuffling. But even Coach wasn't around this morning. When the bell finally rang, we bumped and crunched and kind of climbed over each other to get inside. There were a couple of men in blue uniforms talking to Mrs. Burton, our principal. They stood around in front of the office and pointed down the hall. Then they scratched their heads and pointed in the other direction. Jimmy met me at homeroom. I'd never seen him act so excited. "What's going on?" he asked. What are all the cops doing here?" I shrugged. Mrs. Whitback came in about the time we got to our desks. All the girls rushed over to ask what had happened. She made everyone sit down. "The school had a break-in over the weekend," she announced. "What'd they steal?" Jimmy called out from the desk next to mine. Mrs. Whitback put her grade book up on her desk and shook her head. "They don't know what all is missing yet. We do know they stole some picture money from the office. They took the copy machine and some computers from the math department." "Copy machine?" Barry Calder asked, almost laughing. "That mean we don't have to do more worksheets?" Everybody kind of giggled. Mrs. Whitback raised her eyebrow. "Don't worry about it, Barry. I'll make a special point to see that you have plenty of work to do." We all shut up. It was exciting, but like usual, things quieted down as soon as school started. Everything was back to normal until we went to 4th period. My 4th period class was physical education. I liked it, and I liked Coach Riker. Only today, Coach wasn't in a very good mood. Our class came into the gym and sat down in rows on the floor. Coach called them squads instead of rows, but it was all the same. He usually told us what game we were going to play, and we chose teams. Or he told us what kind of activities we were going to work on, and we went to line up by the balance beam or the climbing rope or whatever. Today we got a lecture. Seemed like whoever broke into the school over the weekend didn't only steal money out of the office and take some computers and the copy machine. They also stole most of our PE stuff. Balls, bats, footballs, basketballs, all the fun stuff was gone. We'll just have to make do. Coach Riker told us. Why anyone would steal computers and footballs is beyond me. You can't sell footballs. They've got words. They've got the words property of Lakeview Athletics Department stamped into the side of them with big letters. So there's no way someone could sell them. Why would anyone steal them? I don't know, but someone did. So we won't be able to play many sports the rest of the school year. Did they get the dodgeballs too? Someone called, cutting him off. I'm afraid so, Coach sighed. Everybody moaned at the same time. Dodgeball was our favorite game. You reckon it was some kid? Gary Marland asked. Coach shook his head. No, a kid wouldn't steal the computers or know where the money was hidden in the office. I figured it was a real robber instead of kids. He paused and scratched his chin. Still, why are footballs and can we get new balls? Doug Boswell asked. Coach nodded. The school insurance will pay to replace things, but we won't be able to get what we need right away. It usually takes months for the insurance money to come in. Then we have to fill out the order forms and we have to wait for the company to deliver. He shrugged. Well, we're probably talking about next school year before we can get everything replaced. He cleared his throat and stuffed his hands in the pockets of his shorts. That's why I want to speak to you today about stealing. Stealing is wrong. When you steal something, when you take something that belongs to someone else. Everyone kind of slumped. Jimmy laced his fingers behind his head and stretched out on the floor. I leaned on one elbow. You see, Coach Riker continued, when someone steals something, it affects a lot of people. It's not just money or things. Just think of all the fun and activities we're going to miss because some sneaking thief. His lecture about the evils of stealing lasted the whole period. I ate with Don at lunch. Jimmy came in and sat with us. Don didn't act like he cared much for Jimmy. The way Jimmy had acted when he spent the night with me, I wasn't that crazy about him either. We let him sit with us, though. Don asked if I wanted to ride bikes to the park again. Jimmy wanted to go too. I stabbed my fork into my tater tot so hard it went clear through and made a crunching sound when it poked into the styrofoam tray. I can't, I muttered. I got to watch Christine. End of chapter 12.